And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On today's episode, we're talking about a jazz saxophonist from Illinois. He started out playing with the Miles Davis Band at the age of 22. Today, he's released 26 solo albums, won a Grammy, and won 2 Grammy nominations. Bill Evans says of his band that it... Today's artist of the week is Bill Evans. He says of his band that it defines the meaning of jazz for him and his audiences. It's all about improvisation and exploration that people can connect to. So on this segment, we're going to be talking about more of his best albums. The first one's called Escape. It's a blend of rap and jazz. Starfish and the Moon was released in 1997. It's a blend of crossover jazz, post-bop and saxophone jazz. In contrast to the hard rap and jazz funk in the previous album, Starfish and the Moon gives us a relaxing compilation of music. Push is an album released in 1994, an album with a wide range of style. And finally, Soul Insider, released in 2000. That was another Grammy-nominated album by Bill Evans, a smooth, cool listening experience to put you in a relaxed mood. One highlight of this album is singer Leigh McCann's appearance in this album. Another highlight of this album, guitar sensation John Scofield's guest appearance on 2 tracks on this album. More details coming up, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. This is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. Today's artist of the week is Bill Evans. We're talking about his biography and best hits. On this segment, we're talking about more of his best albums. Soul Insider was released in 2000. It was another Grammy-nominated album by Bill Evans. A smooth, cool listening experience. It puts you in a relaxed mood. The big highlight of this album is singer Leigh McCann's appearance in this album. He appears as guest vocalist on 2 songs, Lose My Number and You Sure Look Good to Me. The music was written by Bill Evans, lyrics by Leigh McCann. Another highlight of this album, guitar sensation John Scofield's guest appearance on 2 tracks on this album. He appears on Gimme Some and Thump. His guitar melodies are beautifully supplemented by Bill Evans' saxophone playing. The melodies range from introspective melodies like Lose My Number and ethereal songs like What's Going On. Big Mama is a gravelly deep voice track. There's also great dance tracks like Van's Joint and Cool Eddie and The Shorty Shuffle. A totally enjoyable album. Push is an album released in 1994. This one's an album with a wide range of style. The song If Only in Your Dreams has a very romantic mood. London House gives off a 40s big band swing style. Life is Dangerous and Stand Up and Do Something are amazing rap songs. And Bill Evans' saxophone playing is always spectacular. Escape, an album released in 1996 on the label Escapade. There's a lot of rap songs in this album on songs like Reality, the reggae-influenced La-Di-Da. There's also a lot of improvisational singing instead of just pre-recorded tracks. On the instrumental sides, the highlight is hard-edged jazz funk like in songs like Undercover and Rattle Trap and Coravillas. And finally, Starfish and the Moon, an album released in 1997. This one's a blend of crossover jazz, post-bop and saxophone jazz, a follow-up to his album Escape. In contrast to the hard rap and jazz funk in the previous album, Starfish and the Moon gives us a relaxing compilation of music. A highly melodic album, widely hailed as Bill Evans' acoustic album. However, Starfish also has its share of keyboards, synthesizers, as well as electric bass and electric guitar instrumentals. There's subtle introspective songs like The Last Goodbye, Something in That Rose and I'll Miss You. There's also more funky, groovier songs like Whiskey Talk and Shady Lady. Despite this, overall it's a very relaxing album, more relaxing than intense. So that was some of Bill Evans' best albums, the album details and songs in the album, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. We'll be right back after some music. Stay tuned. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan De Silva. On today's episode of the Jazz Update, it's all about jazz icon Bill Evans, his life and times and best hits. You can check out my YouTube channel for the full episode of today's show on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan. If you're in the mood for an ethereal, out-of-this-world jazz album, you might want to check out Slidegate by Sean Noonan, an album that's about self-discovery, conflict and transformation. Sean Noonan's a drummer and composer. He's often called the rhythmic storyteller. A versatile musician with over 30 albums spanning many genres from rock, opera to jazz rock. Slidegate is his third album with his jazz rock band The Pavies, and it's basically a story about an android that sets about reclaiming its humanity. Then the android encounters a mysterious realm called the Slidegate, and there he confronts an illusion of his past as a human being. So the Slidegate is symbolic of a sanctuary of self-discovery. He then emerges from a portal and undergoes a transformation, reincarnating as a human being. This album is a mystical story that is based on the concept of self-discovery and transformation. So this album is available on all digital platforms. For more information, please visit www.seannoonan.music.com. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. On today's episode, it's all about Bill Evans, his life and times and best hits. This is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. On today's episode, we're talking about a jazz saxophonist from Illinois. He started out playing with the Miles Davis Band at the age of 22. Today, he's released 26 solo albums, won a Grammy, and won 2 Grammy nominations. His style is best described as being musically eclectic. His music remains rooted in old-school jazz saxophone. On this segment, we're talking more about his best albums. Soulgrass, a 2005 album that blended jazz and American roots music. It was nominated for a Grammy. A 2016 album release called Rise Above, his 24th solo album in which he beautifully explored vocals beautiful vocals from special guest singers like Greg Allman, Warren Haynes, J.J. Gray, Anders Osborne, and Josh Dyan. The Sunroom was released in 2019, another hit album. It rose to the top of the iTunes download charts upon release. The Common Ground, another beautiful album. The highlight of this album is the guest appearance of singer Max Musky on vocals, and a special series of live performances in Russia gave way to his 2013 album Live in Moscow. And a special series of live performances in Russia gave way to his 2013 album Live in Moscow, featuring performances in beautiful concert venues across Russia. So on this segment, we're talking about these albums. Stay tuned. This is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. We'll be right back after some music. And that was Horace Silver with Diggin' on Dexter, Stanley Cowell, Billy Harper, Reggie Workman and Billy Hart with East Harlem Nostalgia, and Bob James with Playing with Fire. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. On today's show, it's all about Bill Evans, his biography and best hits. On this segment, we're talking about more of his best albums. Soulgrass was a 2005 album that was a result of his love of both American roots music and jazz, an album that was nominated for a Grammy in the process. Soulgrass was an album that blended jazz and American roots music, resulting in a blend between jazz, bluegrass, funk, blues, and rock and roll. The banjo, the fiddle, and the mandolin, a type of stringed instrument, all make an appearance in this album. He followed the release of that album with more records like The Other Side of Something, Dragonfly, and the 2014 release of Live in Moscow, which was a compilation of his live performances in Russia. He performed 14 concerts as a part of a State Department tour of Russia. They played in some of the most beautiful concert halls in the world, from Siberia to Moscow, in front of ambassadors from all around the world. Live in Moscow was recorded at that concert. A special recording in many ways. In this series of concert performances, one gets a glimpse of Josh Dyan's amazing singing and drumming duets, Ryan Kavanaugh scintillating on the guitar, backed by Bill Evans' epic saxophone playing. So with each successful album, Bill Evans was exploring deeper into the realms of jazz and improvisation. He says, "Miles Davis always told me to write and play what inspires me. I've kept true to his advice from the very beginning, regardless of the challenges they may create. Miles gave me the confidence to believe in myself as a player and a composer." 2016 saw his album release Rise Above, his 24th solo album, in which he explored rich and beautiful vocals from special guest singers like Greg Allman, Warren Haynes, J.J. Gray, Anders Osborne, and Josh Dyan. Bill says of this recording was an epic journey for me. My vision from the beginning was to record with some of my favorite singers and co-write music with each one of them. The goal was to still make a cohesive and solid performance out of all this music. I went far beyond my expectations, a sheer pleasure from start to finish. There's another album called The Sunroom, released on Ear Records in 2019, an epic album that rose to the top of the iTunes download charts. Around that time, he made another group with drummer Wolfgang Fanger called Bill Evans and the Spy Killers. They would tour Europe in the month of July. Their first live CD was recorded in 2018 in Australia. Bill Evans said of his band that it was one of his favorite. A band that pushed the envelope of jazz, soul and funk. Also in 2022, he recorded a live album in October called Common Ground. Also in 2022, he recorded a live album called Common Ground, recorded in January 2020. Also in 2020, he recorded an album called Common Ground, but because of COVID, the release was delayed to 2022. That album features Keith Carlock on drums and Daryl Johns on bass. There was also a guest appearance by German singer Max Muske on vocals. His vocals play a large role in this album. Bill Evans describes him as a vocal tour de force. So that was some of the best albums of Bill Evans, and you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. We'll be right back after some music. Here's Bill Evans with The Sunday After. That was Kenny Burrell with Wavy Gravy, Brian Bromberg with Bobblehead, Yanni with Waltz in 7/8, and Bill Evans with The Sunday After. And this is the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. On today's episode of the Jazz Update, we were talking all about jazz icon Bill Evans, his life and times and best music. We've come to an end of today's show, so now it's time to recap what we were talking about. Bill Evans is a world-class jazz saxophonist who made his debut playing alongside Miles Davis at the age of 22. He recorded 6 records with him. That led to an international career as a tenor and soprano saxophone player. He's toured with the likes of John McLaughlin, Herbie Hancock and Mick Jagger, to name just a few. Today, Bill Evans is a world-class saxophonist. He's won 2 Grammy nominations, produced 26 solo albums, and won hearts all over the world as a jazz artist. He says his biggest influences were Michael Brecker, Sonny Rollins, John Coltrane and Stan Getz, among others. 2 of his albums, Soul Insider and Soulgrass, were nominated for a Grammy Award. And now let's talk about some of his best albums. His award-winning album Vance Joint was a collaboration between himself and the German band WDR Big Band Cologne. It was recorded in 2009. Live in Europe is an album documenting his live tours in Europe. There's a blend of all styles of music in this album, from tranquil romantic songs to high-energy peppy numbers. A special series of live performances in Russia gave way to his 2013 album Live in Moscow, featuring performances in beautiful concert venues across Russia. Soul Insider, released in 2000, another Grammy-nominated album by Bill Evans, a compilation of relaxing music. Highlights include guitarist John Scofield and singer Leigh McCann's guest appearances in this album. Soulgrass was another Grammy-nominated album released in 2005. It blended jazz and American roots music. And The Sunroom, released in 2019, was another hit album that rose to the top of the iTunes download charts upon release. So that was a bit about Bill Evans, his biography and best albums. And you're tuned into the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashani Silva. You can check out my YouTube channel for the full episode of today's show on the Weekend Jazz Update with Jashan. And that brings us to an end of today's episode. I'll see you again next week, same time. Have a great week ahead.